Previously on the Jay and Dan podcast.
So I like to sit on the stoop at 1:30 in the morning.
Pet all the stray cats?
Well, this is the thing. I sit there, and I'm just on my phone. I just chill out for a few seconds.
Here, kitty. Ruby?
Hello.
Hi, we're recording our podcast right now.
Right.
She hung up.
Another call from the girls.
Ruby, you want to sit and watch?
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Oh, we're guessing bands right now.
I don't know, but what if I say something?
But I gotta say, this incredible win by this incredible team, it was done with sportsmanship, and that's what we celebrate.
Oh, that one didn't land at all. Here comes the scalpel, me cutting you.
You're listening to the Jay and Dan podcast.
Here, kitty.
Dance.
Hey, vacation watch. This is my last podcast for a month.
Wow. You gonna miss it?
Yeah. We were going to set up
Didn't sound convincing.
studios at, well, I'll be bored out of my mind. But we were going to set up studios at home and
No, we were never going to do that. You suggested that. And I quickly shot that down. I don't want to do anything on my vacation but sit in the nude on my stoop, watch the kitty cats go by.
But I find it cathartic.
Here, kitty.
Get to talk about stuff and
Well, you could still do it, just to yourself, on the road. You got a lot of plans, though. You are renting an RV. Mm-hmm. You're taking the girls somewhere. We don't know where yet.
Well, here's the issue with the RV, because my daughters, the mosquitoes are like them. So if we went to Algonquin Park.
I think anywhere right now, right? You're suffering from the
So you know where we're going, and that accepts free RVs.
Walmart?
Walmart parking lots.
Yeah. Walmart parking lot is full of RVs all the time.
So
kind of fun.
I'll
Kids
get
can
a
go
map.
inside.
I'll say which mall.
So fired up.
Which Walmart are we going to today?
That's actually kind of fun. Walmart to Walmart. You always have supplies inside ready to go. Kids can go and play in the toy section for a little while. You don't buy anything; they just play there.
I don't go in Walmarts. I haven't been in a Walmart in probably 5 years.
They're still there. They're not. They haven't changed.
It's very depressing.
They're waiting for you.
Everyone's sad. No one's happy. And the lighting, I'm all about lighting. We've discussed this before. The lighting is abysmal. You feel like you're in a warehouse. I just hate it. I hate it.
Tell us how you really feel.
But I do love Sobeys. Did I discuss my shopping experience at Sobeys? I don't think so. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
So they have the self-checkouts at Sobeys. Do you use them?
I do. I don't make it I've got to do self-checkout. I just go with whatever. If it's really busy on the main ones, cashier has too many people lined up, I'll dial up that self-checkout. Otherwise, I'm happy to chat with the cashier.
Staff?
I use it all the time unless you have those items where you need to punch in the code yourself, like Bladder or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Sobeys that I was at was lined up at all the checkouts. So I saw the self-checkout was available. The lady's like, come on over, use this. I'm like, okay. So I had 4 items. While I'm checking out, a gentleman walks behind me and says, Hobie, you lose your job. So I'm like, what? Okay, that's weird. So I was finished checking out. I walked out right behind him. He turned around, saw me, goes, hope a robot takes your job. And I said, have a nice day, with a big smile on my face. Looks at me and says, you're a bit aggressive for a Monday afternoon at a Sobeys?
Yeah, that's a bit much. So then you kicked him right in the nuts.
No, but he was locked and loaded. First off, he never even bought anything. I should have pointed that out. I'm like, at least I bought something.
At least I supported Sobeys.
And a human helped me in the process.
You didn't know how to use the self-checkout.
No, I did. She was like, oh, how's your day going? And she's like, oh, yeah, you do this for this, whatever. I don't know what the hell the problem was, but...
Scan barcodes. Mm-hmm. That is aggressive. Do you think he was on the drugs?
I don't know. He was He was a big, burly gentleman.
Oh, was he? He's a big boy. So you don't want to get caught up in all that.
No, so I'm now scarred.
This has affected you more than a lot of things that probably should have affected you over the past for some reason. I think probably because it was broad daylight. You're minding your own business. You're trying to support a Canadian-owned grocery chain. They're offering the goddamn service of self-checkout. Yeah, what a weird thing to do. Do you think he had family who were Sobeys cashiers who lost their jobs or something like that?
I don't know, but anyway, I used the humans last time.
Don't be afraid. Go right to that self-checkout again. And do it with your shirt off. Pants down, fully erect.
What would your response to that gentleman be?
I would have probably been more aggressive back, but then backpedaled if he started to approach me.
He would have, because he stopped. He stopped walking when I said, "Have a nice day."
Yeah. Yeah, I probably would have also told him to go himself, thinking that in the light of day in a parking lot, I would probably be pretty safe. And then I would have got my lights punched out.
Then do you have to go after Sobeys? You say, "Hey, you provided this service and you got me beat up."
It's possible. I certainly might have sued Sobeys. So in a way, I kind of hope that happens to me someday.
So Sobeys,
I'd like to get some Sobeys cash.
If you want to do a customer service campaign on your self-checkouts, I'm your guy. I'll say, "Hey."
I feel like Sobeys execs will hear this and be kind of upset and probably approach you about appearing in their next commercials, replacing Gord Miller and Cassie Campbell.
I let a human know that this happened, and they just went, that works at that Sobeys. They just said, huh.
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to do, right?
They should say, "I feel horrible for you. Here's a bunch of Sobeys bags for free."
Yeah, but the robot might be taking their job next.
That's true. They might also be upset about it. They're just not articulating it in such an aggressive manner.
Imagine they responded, "Yeah?
Yeah.
So?"
We know that guy. We tell him to come here. That's Jim.
Yeah, but
You know he was in a biker gang? Don't with him.
I didn't. That's the thing. I think
He's got a knife at all times. Hey, Dan, can I read a couple of letters to you here? This is pretty exciting.
Letters.
We get letters. This one is actually a direct message on Instagram. It says,
"Ooh,
Hey, Jay, my partner and I are massive fans of yours and Dan, and we are considering making the trek up to Canada for one of your live podcasts."
Good idea.
Assume they live in the United States. "Would you be able to suggest which city we should go to as first-time tourists of your wonderful country, and perhaps suggest a couple of stops for us? We want to plan our travel around whatever cities UFC goes to around the world when we get enough money. This would be a near way to kick off our travels. If you choose to do this on the pod, my wife would love a shout-out, and by Dan, too. Her name is Kat. Hi, Kat.
yo, cat."
She doesn't like Dan. She doesn't like Dan too much. I'm asking for it to be from Dan, so she gets annoyed.
Cat, what's the problem here?
My guess is Kat was the person who was upset at you at that Sobeys that day.
But they don't live here, so they don't know Sobeys.
Okay, so seriously, guys, what do you think? What do you think? Where should they go? Here's my vote, Vancouver. 2 reasons. Sales are slower. And number 2, I believe the UFC is going to Vancouver this fall. Maybe there's a chance, if they are UFC fans, they could do a little tie-in. I don't know.
They might have to stay for a while, but
Well, you just stick around for a couple of weeks.
yeah,
Lots to do there.
Cheap city,
Yeah, not that expensive.
or go to the island. Get to go on a ferry.
Yeah, Victoria is beautiful. I gotta be honest, I'm done with that ferry. I fly.
My
every time.
brother Sean calls it the loser cruiser.
Yeah, hey, go on
Nothing
the ferry.
against ferries.
No, go on the ferry. But I'm done with it. I would rather fly. Okay, that's one letter, and so hopefully that helps you out with a little bit of information. We'd love to see you out in Vancouver, Victoria, and of course, just a reminder: eventbrite.ca for your Jay and Dad podcast live ticket needs.
Come on, it'll be fun.
Vancouver, Victoria, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Calgary. We're hitting them this fall. Go check us out. Here's another one. It's from Northbound. Dear Jay and Dan, I'm so excited to send you guys some shirts. I've been watching the show for years now. I'm a huge fan. Your show is an essential part of the morning for Canadians like me. You keep us informed while making us laugh. Northbound is a brand that's inspired by all things Canadian. As far as I'm concerned, you guys are Canadian icons. I'm honored you'd wear the brand. Sincerely, Justin Piekert. He is the co-owner of Northbound Supply Company. So check them out, northboundsupplyco.ca.
The shirts are stellar.
northboundsupplyco.ca. So buttery soft. They're like Chardonnay. Speaking of Chardonnay, we had a great time Saturday in the first ever Jay and Dan television show outing. We went to the Argos home opener.
Yeah, they lost by 80 points.
They put up a pretty impressive performance against Hamilton, losing by 50.
It was, weather speaking, temperature speaking, the most perfect weather you could possibly draw.
It was gorgeous. Yep. It was
There was no
absolutely awesome.
humidity. It was not a humid day that where you need 3 showers. It was stunning.
And that's often the problem with Toronto. You know, you get nice days, but it does get humid. But not this past weekend. So we did that. And then when the game was over, we wandered over to the Bud stage, which is just kind of right there, basically. And we went to see Arkells. Greatest guys. Hooked us up with beautiful seats for the show. So just want to give a quick shout out to Max and Mike and Tim and all the Arkells. And Ashley, their manager, who's super sweet, and she hooked us up with these great tickets. And then Nick Nurse got on stage and was playing guitar. And that was definitely your favorite part of the night.
It was. I loved seeing that.
And also, just the reaction of the crowd to Nick Nurse was bonkers.
Oh, they went crazy.
It was unbelievable.
Cameraman Glenn was with us. Hound Dog was with it. Producer Tim, not with us.
So producer Tim, I think we might have discussed this last week, did not have alternate plans, did not have anything to do. His vacation had started. So his excuse was, I'm on vacation, so I'm on vacation. Like, I'm going. And I said, are you doing anything? And he said no, he didn't have any plans.
He had 0 plans. This was a plan set in stone that he had to do nothing. He just had to show up.
How insulted should we be? We've been doing the show with him for years and years, and this is the first time of this new version of the show that we've been able to take everybody out, and we just had such a good time. It was a total team bonding experience.
That's right. We had some wings in the suite. We had nachos that I didn't see. We had some wraps. We had popcorn. We had pretzels.
And we just had a great time. We drank, we socialized. You just don't get a chance to do it that much when you're working these shows at night. So it was just a fun experience. And Tim wanted no part of fun. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, isn't that kind of part of Tim's MO, wanting no part of fun? But it's kind of disturbing that he had nothing else to do, and he said, even though I have nothing else to do, I'd rather not do that.
So our new Supreme Leader is G-Bone. Greg Bonetta, he is producing shows this week. He showed up. He took the reins, and now we follow him.
And very exciting, Dan, because today, speaking of great TSNers, we have an amazing guest on the podcast today.
Oh, Stoff, can you poke your head out and send him in? Thanks, buddy.
Jim Van Horne. This is incredible.
I just met him for the first time. He was waiting to come in. You've met Jim before.
And worked with him. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. And Jim is here to talk about a very important subject. Here he comes. Looks like $1 million.
Oh, he does.
Looks like $1 million. Jim, you're right in the middle here. There are the cans.
The rose between two thorns.
Yeah, I know, right? How bad are those headphones? I apologize. That's not...
They're okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, listen to that voice.
Yeah. Do you, when you put on a pair of headphones like that, get in front of a mic, does it feel like you're starting in radio back in the day? Like the old
it
days?
does. It's great. It's terrific. I still love radio. I always did love radio. It was just, one of those things that the great thing I loved about radio was the anonymity. Because you'd get off the air, you'd walk out of the studio, and nobody knew who you were.
Right. But so when you were in the TSN days and you're doing Sports Desk and it's the early days of cable and everybody's watching and people knew you and recognized you, did you not enjoy that as much?
For me, it was uncomfortable. It was always uncomfortable. I'm a pretty private guy by nature, so it was tough. But interesting when you mentioned TSN and the people that knew you, the first couple of weeks on the air when TSN just started back in September of '84, we'd go out to press conferences and we always had to wear the TSN black blazer with the logo and walk in, and I'd walk in and guys would look at me and said, "What the hell is TSN?"
What did you expect when you first arrived at TSN, when they pitched you the idea?
Well, interestingly enough, Dan, when I was in Calgary at the time at CFAC Television, which is now global, and I knew the people that were putting together TSN that were and I'd been bugging them for months for a job.
Right.
Because I honestly believed that TSN would be what it is today. It was just one of those things, like a gut feeling.
Right.
And people would laugh at me. You know, say, how are they going to do 24-hour sports? What are you going to show tiddlywinks every day?
Yeah.
So I really believed back then in '84 that it was going to be successful. And when I left, people just couldn't believe that I would walk away from the job that I had in Calgary and actually take a pay cut to go to TSN in Toronto. Are you nuts?
And why did you? That doesn't seem right that you'd have to take a pay cut. But it was like the early days. They're just getting started. They were taking a chance on everything, right? They
had no money.
They were using their own money, right,
Yeah,
to
they
start
were.
it up.
Yeah.
And it was, they took a real risk, and obviously that paid off in the end for
Well,
them.
one of the things that I asked was that they at least pay for my move from Calgary, and they said no.
Wow.
I said, well, I'm sorry. If you don't pay for my move, I'm not coming. So they said, we'll give you $5,000 for the move, and I had a massive yard sale and just got it down.
And out you came. And so those early days, what were they like? It was you. There's some well-known names that came with you. Michael Landsberg, that was, I believe, his first broadcasting job.
Absolutely.
Period. Right?
Absolutely. There was John Wells, myself, Michael Landsberg, Terry Leibel.
Right.
There were the four of us were the four main anchors, for lack of a better term, and then Steve Cooney, a former CBC alumni, and Peter Watts, also from Edmonton.
Legend.
Yeah, the late great Peter Watts, who just passed away recently, and
wonderful man.
Yeah.
So those are the six guys.
Yeah.
And Wattsy and Cooney were reporters and weekend anchors, and we were producers at the time as well.
Right.
We'd produce the shows.
Wow, really?
Yeah, oh yeah. We put the lineups together, write the script.
And was it like you mentioned, like, what are they going to put on Tiddlywinks? Like, was it a situation where you start, there's a blank slate? Like, was there enough material for you to put a show together?
Actually, TSN made its own material back then. I mean, there was What's Your Call with Pat Marsden.
Right.
They had the soccer show with Dale Barnes. All kinds of
Graham Leggett, I remember.
Graham Leggett
there.
was a mainstay. We started the hockey news, back then. I would host the early edition of Sports Desk, which is now Sports Center. Run into the studio, do the hockey news, and then stay in the second studio and host the hockey games that night.
Wow!
So I get on the air at 6 o'clock. I wouldn't get off the air till 11 o'clock that night. That's what we were doing. That's what everybody was doing.
And when did you guys have the Blue Jays right away, like right at the beginning?
First, I think the Blue Jays was the first program, the first event that we showed, followed by the Canada Cup.
Wow! Wow!
And I hosted that Canada Cup game with Bruce Hood and Roger Nielsen.
Wow.
And Roger used to bring Mike, his husky, into the studio. And the first game we're on the air, Roger's sitting where you are, Dan, to my right, and Mike walks across, and all you can see is his tail going across the set. And Roger couldn't figure out what everybody was laughing at.
So when TSN starts, I should know this answer, but I don't. So we went down to the States when Fox started, Fox Sports 1. They took over a channel that already existed, Speed. So you had built-in viewers.
Right.
When TSN starts, where do those original viewers come from?
No idea. With advertising. They started advertising and,
you had to
word of mouth.
Add it to your cable package, I guess.
And it became, I'm not sure if it was mandatory pickup at that time.
Right.
But
I'm not sure
it became part of the cable package and people started watching. And next thing you know, audiences started growing and getting bigger, bigger, bigger. When we first started, you'd walk in and they say, okay, what do you want to do? Basketball? You want to do baseball?
That's
you want to
so
do
awesome.
hockey? Whatever. Now it's...
Now everyone's fighting for those things.
Exactly.
Dan's fighting with Kate Burness to do Women's World Cup. Kate wins. So then you end up on a lot of us know you from that 6:30 Sports Desk. It was such a great show. And when I was lucky enough to get an internship in 1996, I was going to Ryerson, and I got an internship at TSN. And my first day, I walked in to work on the 6:30 show, and it's you and Mark Milliere, who's running the network here up until a couple of months ago, sitting next to each other. And
was I nice to you?
Well, you were, but you were very quiet. You were very into what you were doing. Mark was completely silent.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember walking up to him and just standing next to him and him staring straight at his computer and not just pretending I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened over and over and over. And then later he'd be like, "Where are you? What's going on? Why haven't you said hi?"
We worked together for 17 years. I think he spoke to me once.
I mean, it was such a fascinating show because he was the kind of producer who You'd be working, and back then everything was on beta tapes. It wasn't digital, obviously. And so the beta tapes would be lined up on a little table next to where Jim and Mark sat. And they all had little Post-it notes saying, Blue Jays, Orioles, or Oilers, Leafs, all the things that were going to end up on those tapes.
And no computers.
Right.
No computers.
At the beginning. And then
Makes sense.
And then, all these tapes would be there. Lots of producers, early in the shift, they'd hand out those tapes, assign these things. It'd be 6 o'clock. The show's on air at 6:30, and 90% of the tapes would still be there unassigned.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Mark would jump up, with his start and just be like, all right, here we go, and throwing them out. And it was mass panic for 28 minutes.
Yeah.
And somehow we always got to air. I don't know how we did it.
It was organized chaos.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous. It was just those first couple of years at TSN were just unbelievably.
It was like the Wild West.
Yeah, very much so. And our first Christmas party, oh, baby, it was fabulous. They were great times.
And so you're at Sports Desk for a while. Then I remember this well. I think it was around '99. The team launches. This is the national sports radio channel that they try to launch. They approach you. First of all, how did they approach you? How did this come about?
They called me out of the blue. Funny, interestingly enough, I'd come home from work one day. And my wife looked at me. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "You know what? I am bored stiff. I need a change. I've got to do something different." She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I have no idea. All I've ever done is this."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the team approached me, and Paul Williams called me up and said, "Would you be interested?" And I balked at first, and then they started talking dollars, and I thought, "Oh,
Okay, now you've got my
always works.
attention.
maybe it's time for a change." And one thing led to another. I met with Jim Waters, who was the manager and the owning family of Chum.
Right.
And I ended up going over there.
And you had a history with Chum before.
Yeah, I was a
TSN.
disc jockey there for 8 years.
Yeah. So
And who was on that show with you again?
The original show was myself and Stephen Brunt.
Stephen Brunt. Okay.
Paul Romanek was the morning guy.
Yeah,
That's right.
I knew
Mike
Romanek
Richards.
was there.
yeah.
And then Gene Velitis had his show.
Gene
and then they
Velitis.
had, I think, they had an afternoon with Jim Rome.
Right.
And then
yes,
I
they
came-
did. They did,
Yeah.
Jim. You're right.
And
yeah.
then I came on with Brunt for 3 hours, afternoon drive, and got slaughtered by what's his face.
And here's what's so I love to talk about this because whether it was a good experience or bad experience for you, the thing that I find fascinating about it was those names you just mentioned, including yourself. I mean, these are incredible broadcasters. They couldn't have done much more to set the station up. I mean, it looked like a winner right off the start.
Stephen Brunt was the smartest man I ever met. Scary smart.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so. I would sit there in awe of the things that he would come up with, and it was. We were only on the air for 16 months before they pulled the plug.
Right.
It was the hardest job I'd ever done in my life.
Wow.
Why is that?
It was because you're always thinking about who you're going to get, who's going to be the guest, what are you going to talk about, what's your topic, what's the big news. It was even more difficult than television.
Yeah.
It was really, really tough.
And you're filling more time.
Oh
and
yeah,
you're-
and you have to be able to be a storyteller.
But
You
I
have
think
to be
the
able to talk.
But don't you think, Jim, the real disadvantage, or the thing that we struggle with even to this day on the show, is making an entire country happy as opposed to
Almost
just a
impossible.
single market?
It is
You can't.
almost impossible.
It's
You
just
can't.
the things that people in Regina want to talk about, probably the riders, are not the things people
Yeah.
in Toronto want to talk about. And it's just so every day we struggle with it.
Well, to this day, I mean, you look at TSN, and how many people say Toronto Sports Network?
Everyone.
It happens.
And we
every
embrace
day.
it now. We make fun of it because people are shocked if we don't mention the Leafs in a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is Canada's biggest market. We
Yeah.
do have to remind people that. So
But it doesn't make it any better if you're living in
Yes,
like I
I
remember
know,
I was living in
exactly.
Winnipeg at the time and listening to you, and I loved it. But yeah, I just knew this is going to be a tough thing. And then the actual pulling of the plug, I heard, was like very abrupt.
They called a meeting.
that's
said,
never good.
We want everybody in the in the boardroom for 12 o'clock. 7 security guards walk in.
Oh, my God.
And line the walls. Everybody's standing there, and they know the guillotine is going to drop.
Yeah.
Jim Waters walks in, literally says, Thank you for your service for the last 16 months. We are going back to music at 3:00 this afternoon. If your last name starts from A to M to the office to the right, from N to Z to the office to the left, thank you very much. Good luck. He turned around and walked out.
Wow.
So does everyone from that room then all congregate outside and then try to decipher what the hell went on, or you just go your separate ways?
I was against. I literally slid down the wall and sat down on the floor. I couldn't. I thought, now what?
Yeah.
First time in my life in, I think, 30 or 40 years I've ever been unemployed, and I was devastated. Some people went crazy. Some people started yelling and screaming, and others just stood there in stunned silence. I literally walked out, grabbed what I could out of my office, and went home, and then a couple of days later, everything that I had left behind was packaged up. And
Should they have gone with a longer leash, more than 16 months, or was that the right call?
Well, honestly, geez. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Honestly, Dan, I don't know. We were getting killed. I mean, the fan was just, McCowan was just too strong. And I told him when I started, I said, if you're looking for a second McCowan, you're not going to get it from me.
Right.
I am not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of broadcaster. I think it should have been given a better chance, but I mean, I'm not management. I don't know.
Right.
And then, what happens after that? What happens?
I took my first summer vacation.
Nice.
I took the whole summer off. I played 128 rounds of golf.
That's good.
And then Sportsnet came to call.
Yeah.
Scott Moore at Sportsnet, a guy who I'd mentored here at TSN.
He was at TSN for a long time while you had been at TSN.
He was one of the original producers that we had.
Running the show over there. He says, come over, do the 6 o'clock show with Jody, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. And so how was that experience? Because you're almost at a startup again in a way.
Yeah, well, they had pretty well established themselves at the time, but back then, they were so wrapped up with what TSN was doing, and instead of acting, they would react.
Right.
You know, TSN's doing this, let's do this.
Yeah.
If they ever took a highlight package for their news show, they would never use the TSN commentator. They would always use somebody else.
Right.
You know, they refused to, and I think it really hurt them in the long run. Instead of making their own niche, they copied or tried to react to what TSN was doing. And then when Scott came in and took over, he started changing the culture of the place, and it obviously it really worked. You know, because they do a pretty good job.
And then I remember they did the even the clothing. They tried the casual clothing for a while.
Yeah, that was before
no
I was there. Yeah,
the old no ties. I remember Brad Fay and some pretty bad jeans. Still haunts me to this day, Jim. Still haunts me to this day.
And I lasted 3 years, and they told me I was too old. Goodbye.
That's again, is it abrupt? Are they coming up to you like immediately?
It was just
over.
like that.
And Scott does that? Like Scott?
No, Scott had already left.
Oh, for CBC.
Yeah, he had already gone to CBC, and then whoever, I can't remember.
There was
actually
some
don't want to
weird
mention
years.
the name.
Well, there in between Scott and then Scott came back. There were some, let's just say, challenging times. I think over there.
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
who worked there would agree with that. It was kind of tough.
It was.
You end up. This is fascinating at the College of Sports Media.
Mm-hmm.
So, I suppose I should get you to explain a little bit about what that was or is, because it's still thriving.
Yeah, CSM is actually thriving. It's a broadcast school that concentrates mainly on sports. I was for the first while that I was there, I was in charge of the writing course for television and the on-air presentation course for television. So one day I would teach writing, next day I would teach presentation. And I worked with first-year students, did the writing and the presentation on Tuesday, Wednesday. And then the second-year students that I worked with, they did shows Tuesday and Wednesday. So every week I would come up with a week schedule, and I would assign producer, director, host, reporters, and all the rest. And I taught them how to do shows. Simple. It's as simple as that.
And do you like it? Do you enjoy that?
I loved it. Mm-hmm. First year, when David Lannis approached me and said, can you do this? Actually, I approached him, and he said, can you do this? I said, you know what? I'll give you a year. If I like it after a year, I'll stay. If not, no harm, no foul. He said, perfect. That's all I want. I said, I'm only working 4 days a week.
Yes.
Nice. I want a long weekend every day.
We should have had you negotiate our deal here, Jim.
Now, can you give us some tips? Because Jay and I are not good broadcasters.
Stay out of bars at night.
we have to because we're here.
That actually is probably given us a little more career longevity, just working at night.
You guys don't need tips. You've got your own thing going, and I admire what you do. I think you guys do a great job.
Well, we were talking before you came out here that our philosophy and what you've said to students is, like I did, go to a smaller market, learn on the fly, learn in a place that'll allow you to do more things than you'd be able to do in Toronto. Now, and Dan and I talk about this all the time, I have a hard time even saying that to young people in broadcasting because there are less and less places to go to.
That's very true.
To do things.
It's I find it really frustrating, especially when you've got kids who are as devoted and as passionate about being in the industry as they are, and the opportunities are diminishing left hand over fist.
So how do you remain positive with those people?
Because
you don't want to say, oh yeah, go chase your dream, and then know that dream might not be able to.
Well, the approach that I took when I was teaching was, the first thing I said to the students was, you are about to have the best 2 years of your life. You are going on a ride, and if you work hard, chances are you're going to do really, really well. You're going into an industry that is very challenging. It's very demanding. It's not easy. It's not as easy as you think it is. Just because you have an encyclopedic mind for sports doesn't mean that you can talk about sports.
Right.
Or you can show sports. So it's up to you to work as hard as you can, to be as good as you can be every single day. And if you can't, go home. I was brutally honest with the kids. That's one thing that I don't think any student would ever accuse me of gilding the lily when it came to their prospects.
Did anyone go home?
Couple.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, a couple did.
Yeah, I guess so. But what's great is, and we've got lots of people on our staff that you taught, and so now to this new generation of broadcasters, you're known as a teacher to them, and I got to say, across the board, and I'm not just saying this, they all absolutely loved you.
I think they're too afraid to say anything.
They might be, but I feel like maybe it's kind of neat because you said, well, I did the Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I did the scheduling. Like, you're almost, again, you went through all these stages in your career where you're making things up in a way on the fly just based on your instinct.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, I came up with the course, the syllabus, and all the rest. And the most gratification that I received time and time again over 10 years that I taught was parents coming up to me at graduation and saying, you know what, when Jay came to you, he was a boy. Now he's a man. Or when Julie came to me, she was a little girl. Now she's a grown woman. You've really helped them develop. You've mentored them the proper way. And that, to me, that used to bring tears to my eyes. I was so honored that somebody would say something like that to me. After sharing what the experiences that I had with these kids and hoping that they would go on and have the opportunity to have those experiences as well. But that to me was the reward. And to see, guys like, I don't know, Faisal Khamisa at Sportsnet, Sarita Patel, who was working here, who's now gone to
working
Fort
for
St.
us.
John.
She's gone on, and she's going to be back really quick and be on TSN.
Just
really
to
quick.
see that, and kids that have gone on to, to success, whether it be in front of the camera or behind the camera or in radio, and there are a lot of them. That really does my heart good.
You could say the same thing about Rod Smith. You must have kind of mentored him because he took over that desk from you.
That's right. Rod was actually at CBC Radio Sports as a reporter. And when he came over as what we used to call a flugan, which is a story editor, we used to call them flugans back then. I think you were a flugan.
Well, I was.
Were you post?
I was an EA, so I never even made it to story editor, Jim. I got out while the getting was good. Before they could figure it out.
Yeah, anybody who did highlights was a flugan.
So Rod was a flugan.
Rod was a flugan, and when I announced that I was leaving, they said to me, "Who do you think should take the job?" I said, "Hands down, Rod Smith. He's the guy."
Yeah.
And he's been doing it
a long time.
Well,
yeah.
A voice handed it off to a voice because your guys' voices are so.
I'm like a soprano compared to this guy.
Yeah.
I mean.
And then you teach at College of Sports Media. You're doing so great there. And then I believe 2015, something happens to you, and that's one of the reasons you're here to talk to us today. Pretty frightening.
Cancer, yes. Yeah. It was. I woke up one morning. It was in December. 10 years ago. It'll be 11 years ago this December. I woke up, went to the washroom, looked down, and saw a bottle of ketchup had been emptied in the toilet bowl. And I was terrified. It was filled with blood. And I immediately went to my wife. I said, Mel, I'm going to the hospital. Something's wrong. And I went on my own. And they quickly did an MRI. They said, we have found a fleshy mass in your bladder. We want a urologist to take a look at it. Turned out that it was cancer, and they did a cystoscopy and found 4 massive tumors in my bladder, which I had no idea. I had no previous knowledge.
No
symptoms,
pain,
nothing.
No symptoms, nothing.
No burning, no pain,
Wow.
no nothing. And all of a sudden, I go in there as a healthy man and walk out with, these 4 tumors in my bladder. And the interesting thing was that the resident who was operating the camera, if you look at the palm of your hand, that's what the inside of your bladder looks like. It's fleshy, it's clear, and all the rest. He's panning from right to left with this camera, and I'm watching it. I can see it on the TV screen in big high HD. And he's moving the camera along. I says, Doc, I said, you should come to my school. I can give you a camera lesson. I said, your camera work is really shaky. Mr. Van Horne, this is a serious examination, please. And then all of a sudden it goes black.
Wow.
With the tumors.
So, what's your initial thought?
My initial thought was, when does it come out? He said, we'll have to take him out as soon as possible. I said, well, when do you find out if it's malignant? He said, it's malignant. You got cancer.
Wow.
That's exactly the way he said it. As I'm lying on the table with my legs at 90 degrees, and he's, looking inside my body, I thought, holy smokes.
So did they just keep you there and just do it that day?
No, they sent me home 2 weeks later. They brought me back for the first, what they called, it's called a TURPT, a scraping of your bladder. They literally go in with a branding iron, a red hot iron, and they cut out the tumors and send you home.
And everything successful?
Well, they remove the tumors at the time. It takes 6 weeks to heal, and then you start your treatment, which is a thing called BCG. It's actually a live tuberculin virus that is injected into the bladder through a catheter. You hold it for 2 hours, if you can, and then you void it. And you have that every week for 6 weeks, and that is supposed to be the gold standard treatment for bladder cancer. And over 8 years, I probably had it 20 times, and it never worked. And then at the end, after 8 years, I tried a radical treatment, a form of chemo with a drug called mitomycin, which I think is $800 a vial. And you get it's like a penicillin bottle. And they inject it in again. You lie there for 2 hours with it, and then they take it out. And it was supposed to be a new radical treatment that wasn't covered by OHIP. Cost me an arm and a leg, and it didn't work. So at that point, my oncologist, Dr. Alexander Zlata from Mount Sinai, who was my lifesaver, he said, we can continue to do this for as long as you want. He said, but eventually you're going to have to think about surgery, because if it ever breaks through the wall, you're done. It's, anything can happen. I said, okay, so I went for another year. And after 8 years, I started to hemorrhage and really bleed a lot. And he said, you know what? You got to have the conversation. It's time. I said, okay. So we decided on surgery. It was scheduled for 2 years ago, this past March. I went in. The day of my surgery, I went in. I was prepped and cleaned and on the table. It was scheduled for 8 o'clock. At 7:45, they came to me and said, we have an emergency. We're postponing your surgery for 2 weeks.
Oh, my God. Come on. Oh.
So
I can't even imagine.
I went through the whole thing, the whole preparation treatment again. Next time I came back, the last thing he said to me before I went in, he said, be prepared for the worst 2 months of your life.
Wow.
And he was right. 9.5 hours on the table. They removed my bladder, my prostate, all the lymph nodes, a portion of the colon, and they took the colon, which was about 6 inches long, and they rebuilt my bladder. It's now called a neobladder. And then they reattach all the nerves.
Wow.
To the bladder itself.
God.
So it's 9.5 hours.
Wow.
And I woke up. If you ever been under anesthetic, like a general,
Yeah.
you sort of you count back from 100,
Yeah.
100, 99,
And you're out.
and you're out. And you wake up, you don't know where the hell
Exactly.
you are, what day it is.
Yeah.
And I was in hospital for 2 weeks, and another 5 months after that before I could start feeling that I was semi-normal.
Wow. Was there pain right after?
It
Like,
was
just
excruciating.
Wow.
I had
So he was correct on the 2 months.
Oh, yeah. It was 2 weeks after surgery, I wondered why the hell I ever did this. It was really, really bad.
Wow.
And but I suffered through it. And once they took everything out of me, all the tubing and the catheters, and I mean, I was black from bruises.
Yeah.
And once they got rid of all that stuff, I started to heal pretty quickly. And I came through it okay, and here I am.
And how are you today? Like,
2.5 years, and it was 2 months ago. My doctor said to me, he said, Jim, he said, I think it's time you started to get used to the idea that your bladder cancer is not coming back.
wow,
That's
awesome.
amazing.
And
That's
he
fantastic.
said, bladder cancer is not coming back.
Right.
We can't talk about anything else.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as of right now, I mean, they don't say for sure for 5 years that you're clear, or that you're cured. But he's pretty confident that I'm okay.
Well,
That's
congratulations. That's
Thanks.
I didn't know where the story was headed, but I'm glad that it's
There
got us
will
here.
be a sequel.
Yeah.
And the campaign, the lemons that you guys brought in. Tell us a little bit
It's
about that.
hashtag sour face selfie. We encourage folks to quarter a lemon, suck on the lemon, and get your reaction. Take a picture and post it online. It's for Bladder Cancer Canada, just to raise awareness about bladder cancer. It is the fifth leading cancer in the country, fourth leader among men, 10th among women. 90,000 people have it, and 9,000 people will be diagnosed with it. And it is the least funded cancer of them all, and the most expensive to treat. On average, $250,000 per year per patient to treat. Now, do the math.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
10 years for me.
unbelievable.
So are there
Yeah.
any things to watch for? Looking back, did your doctor say, well, you should have noticed it here? Or is when you have blood in your urine, is that the telltale sign? Is
Well,
that the only sign?
obviously, if you're a guy, you can be as macho as you want to be. But if you see blood in your urine, you're stupid if you don't go see
Oh,
it.
yeah.
It's just you're just
100,000%.
looking for trouble. And a lot of guys are like that.
Yeah.
I'll just wait. I'll wait a couple of days. Yeah, it'll go away. It's nothing. So if there's any kind of burning sensation as you're urinating, any kind of pain that you feel like cramping or anything, and the big one is blood.
Yeah.
If you see blood, call your doctor.
right.
It's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. But like you said, these, not to say that certain cancers should get more money than others, but it's great to raise awareness this way, because otherwise, how are we going to raise more money for bladder cancer? People don't know about it.
A lot of people don't know about bladder
Yeah.
cancer.
This is the first I've ever discussed it in my life.
You know, when I was telling people I've got cancer, well, what kind of bladder cancer? Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
it's
we're
like
used to prostate cancer. We're used to a lot of that in men.
liver,
obviously.
brain, lung,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not pretty. And
No.
I think the reason a lot of people don't talk about it is because it's down there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like in the privates. You know,
Yeah.
We don't talk about the private there.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
Well, Dan and I do a lot.
Well, I understand. I've heard that.
So now we're going to have you come over to do the TV show with us.
Yeah.
I think we're going to do some lemons over there.
Yeah, we're going to do the lemons over there. And
And then you're going to give us on the TV show all the dirt about guys you used to work with, like Rod Smith and Michael Landsberg. And do we have anyone else we're going to get the
Oh,
dirt
yeah,
on?
we're going to get everybody. Chris Sedens.
Chris Sedens.
Actually, I don't think we have Chris Sedens, but I.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a name I just wanted to pull out and see how you reacted. Because there's so many guys like Chris. You know, I remember growing up watching Chris, and then it's so fascinating because I think for a lot of kids who watch us, maybe they watch us on TV and then they come to work with us, or they're taught by you and they wonder what we're really like. And Chris was a real fascinating guy when I finally got to
One story about Chris Sedens. He's sitting on the set and he's got his coffee mug sitting there. And Ron Andrews was producing the show. Bless his heart. He's long gone past. And he hits the talk back to talk to Chris. He says, "Chris, get your coffee mug off the desk." And Sedens says, "Bob Costas has his mug on his desk." And Ron, the producer, comes back and says, "You're not Bob Costas."
When I got to TSN, by the way, Ron was our archivist, and he was such a great man. Yeah.
He was the original statistician for the NHL.
Wow.
And he used to write every statistic out by hand.
Oh, my God.
He had
Old
these
school.
massive volumes that he would write, penalty minutes, everything, shots
Like
shots on
Steve
goals.
Dryden, who
I was just going to
is
say,
here now.
Steve Dryden's still doing that, by
You're
the way,
kidding.
Jim. He has his pencils and his notebooks, and they're kind of famous around here.
Wow.
I don't know what he
And
does with
last question before we wrap up. Do you have any of the TSN Blazers still?
Actually, I have a TSN Blazer in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Wow.
No way.
It is my
That is
Blazers
so
in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And the other one is at College of Sports Media at CSM in the Jim Van Horne Lounge.
Yes, it should be.
pretty good. If you're going to get something named after you, let it be a lounge. Jim, this was awesome having you on the
Thanks
podcast.
so much.
I really appreciate you taking the time. And
Should I send the check in now or?
Sure.
By the way, I'm writing a book.
Are you?
Oh.
Tell us.
If you know a publisher
Yeah,
who's
I
interested
do.
in my story, it's a fascinating story.
Yeah,
He does. He's put out
I
2
I have a
books.
couple, and I can help you with that. I think that would be amazing. Actually,
I knew you'd come through. I knew you'd come through.
Jim Van Horne, pleasure to have him on the podcast. Dan, this is it for you for many weeks. Dan's going on vacation, Jim. So if you want to come in and fill in,
Going on an
be
RV
pretty
with
fun.
my daughters.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to fill in, hopefully I'll win the lottery when I'm away, and then just buy that RV and just keep driving.
I've always wanted to do that.
Hey, you can come. I
all
need a
these things
co-pilot.
Jim's going to be just not going to have enough time for all these things we have for him.
Imagine that.
Beautiful.
Cut to next week. Me and Jim riding in an
Heading
RV
down the highway.
to Algonquin Park.
Dan's daughter is in the back.
Who is this man with
Uncle
us?
Jim.
I was watching on Netflix the Rolling Thunder review.
Oh, the Bob Dylan doc.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
There we go.
There it
that'd
is.
be perfect.
That's the new Rolling Thunder review.
Down the road.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
That's it. Dan, have a great vacation.
Thank you.
Oh, I think Christoph has something special for you here. It's gonna be sad.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
I'm sure you'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. Make sure you get your tickets for the tour.
Thanks, everyone.